The city never slept, but for Armin, the nights were the hardest. While others rested in warm beds, he lay curled on a torn sackcloth beneath the shadow of a broken street lamp. His stomach growled in protest, and the cold pavement pressed cruelly against his bones. Beside him, the rusted shutters of a bakery released the faint scent of bread, torturing him with promises he couldn't afford. At just 11 years old, Armin was already invisible to most. The world passed him by, hurried footsteps, glowing cars, people with pockets full of coins, but hearts empty of compassion. To them, he was just another ragged boy with dirt on his cheeks and begging in his eyes. Each morning, he rose before dawn and joined the other children at the busy market square. While some polished shoes and others carried loads for merchants, Armin begged, his palms stretched out to strangers. Sometimes they dropped a coin, more often a scowl. "Work instead of begging," they would shout. But they didn't know that Armin wanted to work. He wanted nothing more than to build, to learn, to rise. He had once gone to school, just for a year, before poverty and hunger had pulled him out. His father had abandoned them, and his mother had fallen sick. Armin had no choice but to beg to buy her medicine. Even in his tattered clothes, with his ribs showing through his skin, Armin carried a spark in his eyes. He didn't just see coins. He saw opportunity. While others begged mindlessly, he studied the shoes of businessmen, the suits of executives, the cars of entrepreneurs. He memorized their words, their gestures, their confidence. "Someday," he whispered to himself, "I won't be the boy begging on the street. I'll be the man they begged to work for." That evening, he returned to the small alley where his mother lay on a mat, coughing softly. Her face was pale, but her eyes shone with love as she stroked his hair. "Did you eat today, Armin?" she asked. He lied. "Yes, Sammy." In truth, he had given the little bread he bought to her, choosing hunger over watching her starve. As the night deepened and the stars flickered faintly above the polluted sky, Armin wrote words in the dirt with a broken stick. He couldn't afford notebooks, so the earth became his paper. He wrote the only dream that kept him alive. "One day, I will not beg. I will build." And with that vow, the beggar boy closed his eyes, his heartbeat sinking with the rhythm of a dream far bigger than the street that held him. The morning sun painted the market in shades of gold, but to Armin, the world looked gray. He sat on the curb near the tea stalls, his little palms stretched out, his stomach aching with hunger. Merchants shouted prices, rickshaws honked, and smoke curled from frying oil, but no one spared a glance at the boy in rags. "Move, you little beggar," barked a shopkeeper, kicking dust in his direction. Armin staggered back, his cheeks burning with shame. But instead of tears, determination flickered in his eyes. "Someday," he thought, "they'll regret pushing me away." That afternoon, a man in a dark suit walked through the market. He was tall, well-groomed, and carried a leather briefcase that gleamed in the sun. Armin stared at him, not with envy, but curiosity. Who was he? What did he do? Why did people move aside for him with respect? The man stopped at the tea stall, ordered a cup, and while waiting, pulled out his phone to check something. His briefcase slipped slightly from his hand, and a shiny silver coin rolled out, spinning in circles on the ground. Armin darted forward and caught it before it slipped into the drain. His fingers closed around it as if it were treasure. He looked at the man, hesitating. He could run. He could keep it. But something inside him whispered, "This isn't yours." "Sir," he called out, his small voice barely cutting through the noise. He ran up and stretched out his dirty hand. "You dropped this." The man looked at him, surprised. For a moment, his eyes softened. He took the coin, but then studied the boy. "Why did you return it?" Armin blinked. "Because it's not mine." The man smiled faintly. "Most people wouldn't have." He reached into his pocket, pulled out 2 more coins, and pressed them into Armin's palm. "Honesty is more valuable than money. Keep this." Armin's heart pounded, not from the weight of the coins, but from the weight of the words. Honesty is more valuable than money. That night, as he crouched in the alley beside his coughing mother, Armin showed her the coins. Her frail fingers touched them as though they were gold. "Armin," she whispered, her eyes wet, "never let poverty steal your honesty. One day, it will raise you higher than wealth alone ever could." He nodded, clutching the coins tightly. He didn't spend them. Instead, he hid them in a tin box he had found in the trash. To him, they weren't money. They were proof. Proof that integrity mattered. Proof that even a beggar boy could be seen for more than his rags. Days turned into weeks, and Armin's hunger sharpened his mind. He began carrying bags for shoppers at the market, polishing shoes, running errands. Each coin he earned went into the box. Each evening, he whispered to himself, "I'm not just saving money. I'm building a future." One afternoon, while carrying groceries for a customer, Armin noticed something. A group of workers huddled around an old radio, listening to news about business tycoons. The announcer spoke about men who had started from nothing, who now owned empires worth billions. Armin's chest swelled with fire. If they could do it, why couldn't he? He began listening every day, memorizing names, companies, stories. He asked merchants questions. How do you sell more? Why do some customers buy and others don't? Some shooed him away, but others laughed and answered. Unknowingly, the market became his classroom, and every merchant his teacher. One evening, while scavenging near a bookstore's trash, he found half-burnt pages of a business magazine. The cover was torn, but inside were words he could barely read. Patiently, letter by letter, he began teaching himself again, recalling the 1 year he had spent in school. His friends mocked him. "Why are you reading garbage, Armin? You'll always be a beggar." He looked up, his eyes blazing. "Today I beg. Tomorrow I'll build. Watch me." The words became his mantra. Each time someone insulted him, he whispered them under his breath. Each time his stomach growled, he pressed a hand over it and repeated, "Tomorrow I'll build." Months passed, the tin box grew heavier. Armin had enough to buy secondhand shoes, a shirt without holes, and a notebook. In the notebook, he began scribbling ideas, tiny businesses he could start. Selling tea, repairing shoes, cleaning services. Each idea filled pages, though none had yet come alive. One night, as his mother slept, Armin sat under the street lamp, flipping through his notes. A thought hit him like lightning. What if I start small? Really small? He circled one idea and read, selling boiled corn in the market. It needed little money, just corn, salt, and a pot. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. The very next morning, clutching the first coins of hope and the courage of a dreamer, Armin stepped into the market not as a beggar, but as a boy about to take his first leap toward empire. Armin's palms were sweaty as he carried the borrowed pot and a small bag of corn kernels to the marketplace. The smell of frying samosas and spicy tea filled the air, and the clamor of vendors shouting their prices rang in his ears. But today, he wasn't one of the boys begging on the roadside. Today, he was here for something different. He had begged a local vendor to lend him a cracked aluminum pot and borrowed a handful of coal from another. His small tin box of savings had been emptied to buy 10 corn cobs, some salt, and a pinch of chili powder. That was all he had. If it failed, there would be no second chance. He set up under the shadow of the banyan tree, far from the bigger stalls but visible enough to passers-by. His little fire crackled, and soon, the first kernels hissed in the pot. He sprinkled salt with shaking hands, the smoke curling into his eyes. At first, people ignored him. They were used to seeing Armin as a beggar, not a seller. Some even laughed. "Look, the street rat thinks he's a businessman now." But Armin forced himself to smile at every passerby. Fresh corn. Hot and tasty. Only 1 rupee. An old rickshaw driver stopped, curiosity piqued. He sniffed the steam and handed Armin a coin. Armin quickly packed the hot corn in a scrap of newspaper and passed it to him. The driver took a bite, his eyes widening. Good. Spicy. Worth it. That one compliment lit a fire in Armin's chest. Soon, another man bought, then a child tugged at his mother's hand, demanding some. By evening, Armin had sold all 10 corn cobs. He held the coins in his palm, heavier than gold, heavier than anything he had ever owned. That night, when he showed his mother, She wept tears of pride. "You didn't beg today?" she asked softly. "No, Amy," Armin whispered, smiling. "I sold." From that day on, he wasn't a beggar anymore. He was a businessman, however small. Every morning, he bought corn with half his earnings and used the rest for his mother's medicine. His reputation grew. People began calling him the Corn Boy. Children flocked to him, laughing and chatting as they ate. Even adults began to admire his determination. But not everyone was happy. A larger food stall owner named Kareem frowned at the growing line near Armin's tiny setup. "That boy is stealing my customers," he muttered. One evening, he shoved Armin's pot, spilling corn onto the dirt. "Go back to begging where you belong." Armin's heart thudded, but he stood his ground. "I'm not begging anymore. I'm working." Kareem sneered. "You call this work? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." Tears stung Armin's eyes, but he refused to bow his head. He gathered the scattered corn, blew off the dust, and sold them anyway. The customers who had witnessed the cruelty whispered angrily, some even buying extra just to support him. That night, Armin wrote in his notebook under the street lamp, "People can take away my food, but not my fire." Weeks turned into months. Armin saved enough to buy a second pot, then a wooden cart. He painted it with shaky hands, "Armin's Corn, fresh and honest." His honesty became his brand. When customers gave extra coins, he always returned the balance exactly. "Every rupee counts," he would say. Slowly, trust built. But tragedy wasn't far. One winter night, his mother's cough worsened. Armin held her frail hand as she struggled to breathe. "Don't stop, Armin," she whispered weakly.
"Keep building.
"Promise me." Tears blurred his eyes. "I promise, Sammy. One day, the world will know my name." She smiled faintly, then closed her eyes forever. The loss shattered him. For days, he couldn't bring himself to light the fire, couldn't bear to face the world. The alley where she had lain felt empty, cruel. But on the fourth night, he opened the tin box where he still kept the first 2 coins from the businessman. He held them to his chest. "If I stop now, everything she suffered will be wasted. I can't." He returned to the market, his grief etched into his face, but his resolve sharper than ever. He worked harder, expanded faster. By the time he was 17, he had 3 carts and hired other boys from the street, boys who once begged with him. "No more begging," he told them. "We sell. We earn. We rise." Armin had planted the seed of something bigger than himself. The beggar boy was becoming a leader. And though the world still called him Corn Boy, he knew in his heart he was destined for more. The fire in his chest whispered louder each night. This is only the beginning. By 18, Armin had 3 carts for boys on payroll and a ledger made from stitched-together notebook pages. He wrote every sale, every expense, every coin returned as change. His hand was steady, his numbers cleaner than most shopkeepers on the lane. Still, the market called him Corn Boy. He didn't mind. Labels were weather, he was learning to be climate, but growth attracts shadows. One humid afternoon, as crowds pressed around his cart near the bus stop, a municipal inspector arrived with a small entourage and a larger frown. The man wore a crisp shirt, a pen clipped like a dagger. "License," the inspector demanded. Armin froze. "Sir, I've applied." "Applied?" The pen tapped the clipboard. "Operating without a food vendor license is illegal. Pack it up." Whispers rippled through the line. A few customers drifted away. Kareem, owner of the big stall across the lane, leaned on his counter and smirked. Armin swallowed. "Sir, I'm ready to do everything properly. Just tell me the process." The inspector's eyes slid sideways, then back. "Process is simple. Form, health check, fee, and cooperation." The last word hung heavy. A boy from Armin's team, Nasir, tugged his sleeve. What do we do?" Armin looked at the cart, the pot steaming, the corn bright as sun. He thought of his mother's last whisper, "Don't stop." He straightened. "We follow the rules," he said aloud, more to himself than to anyone else. "Whatever it takes." The inspector scribbled something and left a notice. 3 days. Shut down till licensed. He turned, walked to Kareem's stall, and accepted a free plate piled high. The cart felt colder after they left. That night, under the dim bulb in the alley, Armin spread the notice and his ledger on the ground. Numbers he could tame. Systems were another beast.
He rose before dawn and stood outside the licensing office when the shutters rolled up. Inside, the air smelled of paper and impatience. Lines snaked. Voices thudded. A bald clerk glanced at his form and pushed it back with one finger. Health certificate. Kitchen address. Food safety training slip. Next. I cook on site. Sir. Clean water. Fresh corn. Aye. Next. Armin stepped aside, jaw tight. Outside, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He had crossed deserts to get this far. He would not drown at a desk. He walked to the public library, the only place that had ever offered him a chair without asking for money. On a creaking computer, he searched how to get a food license. Step by step, he filled what he could, listed what he couldn't. Stuck? A voice asked. Armin looked up. The man from years ago. The suit, the leather briefcase, the coin that had rolled toward a drain, stood there with new streaks of silver at his temples. His eyes still held that bright, assessing warmth. You, Armin breathed. You dropped the coin. I returned it. And you kept your honesty, the man said, smiling. I remember honesty. He glanced at the screen. Cabin sorry, he introduced, offering a hand. Logistics and retail supply. What's your plan, Armin? Armin told him, words tumbling. Cats, clean corn, honest change. Training boys who used to beg. The inspector, the wall. Kabir listened like a banker, and a teacher had a son. 2 lessons, Kabir said, when Armin ran out of air. First, own the paperwork. The street will always test you, so carry a shield. Second, own the brand. Don't just sell corn. Sell trust. What's written on your card? Armin's corn, fresh and honest. So, good. Now make that promise official. A name, a logo, a standard. One taste, everywhere. Can you keep numbers? Armin pushed his ledger across. Kabir scanned it, eyebrows rising. Unit economics, he murmured. Your gross margin on a cob. Armin told him. Kabir nodded slowly. Not bad, but fire alone doesn't scale. Systems do. He slid a card across the desk. Meet me in 2 days. Bring your registration forms. I'll show you a path. No shortcuts. Only doors. 2 days later, in Kabir's glass-walled office where the city looked like a circuit board, Armin sat on a clean chair and tried not to stare at the coffee machine. Kabir introduced him to a woman with sharp eyes and a kinder smile. This is Raina, he said. She runs a food safety training firm. She'll certify your team. And this, he passed a folder, is a list of microfinance groups that fund first-time vendors with clean books. You have clean books. Armin's throat tightened. Sir, I don't have collateral. You have integrity. Rare collateral. Kabir said, I won't give you money today. I will give you a map. If you walk it without breaking your word, I'll consider investing. The week became a sprint. Armin and his boys scrubbed pots till they reflected faces. They took food safety classes at a community center, learned to wash hands like surgeons, to label containers, to keep hot things hot and cold things cold. He registered Armin Foods Private in a font that looked too formal for his history and exactly right for his future. He got a rented commissary kitchen, a legal address for paperwork, and hung his mother's photo on the wall. At the licensing office, the clerk flipped through his file, now thick and neat. He stamped, signed, and said, You people don't usually. He stopped. Approved. Armin exhaled a laugh that was half relief, half prayer. When he returned to the market with laminated licenses hung like medals from his cart, the inspector came by, saw the papers, and left with a thinner smake. But Kareem's shadow remained. One evening, just as the queue lengthened, smoke billowed. Someone had accidentally knocked a coal bucket. Flames licked the cart side. Nasir yelped. Armin grabbed the sand bucket, smothered the fire, then lifted his head and looked straight at Kareem. No words, just a look that said, I will not break. The next morning, Armin rolled out a newly painted cart, yellow like morning, with a kernel-shaped crown above the name. Staff wore matching caps. A small sign read, "Exact change, exact cleanliness, exact respect." Another, handwritten, "No begging, only building." A college student filmed the cart, the uniform, the line, the sign. She captioned it, "From street to standard, this is how you build." The clip found phones a Wayfire finds air. Sales doubled, then steadied. Armin tested new SKUs, butter lime, chili cheese, smoky masala. He priced them carefully, wrote the cost breakdown in his ledger, and culled flavors that didn't carry their weight. He placed QR code stickers on the cart for digital payments, learned from a librarian, laminated by a friend. Exact change became instant change. Kabir visited the cart one evening, tasted quietly, watched the line, nodded. "You've built more than a snack," he said. "You've built a ritual." So, Armin asked, "How do I move from carts to stores?" Kabir's eyes scanned the street, then returned. "First, prove a store works. One kiosk near Transit Hub. Track footfall, conversion, repeat buyers. Build SOPs, then replicate." "Money?" Armin asked. Kabir rubbed his chin. "I'll seed your first kiosk if you hit 3 milestones, license compliance for every unit, 2 months of audited numbers, and a plan to hire from the street, like you." Armin stuck the milestones to the inside of his ledger cover in red ink. The team worked like a single body, training, cleaning, smiling, serving. At night, Armin drafted a kiosk plan at a plastic table, measuring in strides because he couldn't afford a blueprint. He drew a counter here, a warming cabinet there, a hand wash station with a foot pedal because hands should touch food, not taps. 3 months later, a small kiosk opened inside the Metro concourse, Almond Foods in bold yellow, Colonel Crown glowing above. The counter gleamed. The menu was a slim, disciplined soldier, 5 items, no more. A bell chime for every sale. The boys, now in crisp polos, said welcome like it meant I see you. Morning commuters hesitated, sniffed, bought. Lunch crowd swelled. Office workers returned for the same order, the same heat, the same exactness. After a week, a short email arrived from Kabir. Milestones met. Check your account. Now build a manual, then build the second kiosk. That night, after shutters rolled down and coins were counted and the QR dashboard balanced with a ledger, Armin stood in the empty concourse, palms flat on the counter. He looked up at the logo, the Colonel Crown, and spoke to the darkness where his mother might be listening. "Ammi," he whispered, "I'm keeping my promise." Outside, the city was a web of light. Inside, the kiosk hummed softly, a small machine made from honesty and heat. He locked the shutter, tucked the key into his pocket, and felt for the old tin box there too, the first 2 coins and the first 2 words that had changed everything. Build. Honestly. Tomorrow would bring new tests, leases, suppliers, accountants, copycats, but tonight he allowed himself 1 minute of stillness. A beggar boy had opened the door. The hallway beyond was long. He was ready to walk. The kiosk inside the metro station quickly became more than a food stop. It became a phenomenon. Each morning, office workers lined up, their briefcases and handbags brushing against each other as they waited for hot, spiced corn. Students stopped by between classes. Commuters grabbed cobs on their way home, and word spread. "Have you tried almonds corn yet? It tastes like ambition." Within 6 months, sales had tripled projections. Armin reinvested every rupee. Better equipment, cleaner uniforms, brighter lights. He hired more boys from the street, kids who once begged alongside him. Now, they stood tall in uniforms, earning, smiling. But with success came shadows. Karim, the same rival stall owner who once mocked him, now watched with envy. His greasy kebab stall, once dominant in the market, lost customers daily. Rumors spread. Karim was paying inspectors to find faults in Armin's kiosk. One evening, as Armin closed the shutters, Karim approached, his voice low and sharp. "So, the street rat thinks is king now." Armin didn't flinch. "I'm no king. Just a worker who doesn't quit." Karim sneered. Workers don't build empires, but thieves do. He tossed a crumpled fly at Armin's feet. It advertised a new store, Royal Corn, better taste, better price. Armin bent, picked it up, and studied it. Same yellow, same crown logo, only twisted. His stomach tightened. Copycats. That night, he couldn't sleep. His team looked to him for leadership, and he knew one truth. Anyone could copy taste, but no one could copy trust. He sat at his plastic desk, flipping through his old notebook filled with ideas. At the back, one page bore his mother's words, "Never let poverty steal your honesty." The next day, he called his team together. They can copy our logo, our taste, even our colors, but they can't copy who we are. Every customer who walks in here must feel seen, respected, and valued. That's our real product. He introduced new policies: free corn for school children once a week, discounts for metro workers, and a promise written on the wall: if we ever cheat you, your food is free. The policy spread like wildfire on social media. People came not just for the corn, but for the principle. Bloggers wrote articles. A local news channel filmed a feature on the beggar boy who became an honest entrepreneur. Soon, Kabir called. "You've proven the kiosk works. Time for the next step." Armin's heart raced. "Another kiosk?" "No," Kabir said. "A small cafe. 4 walls, tables, a brand. Time to move from snack to experience." The leap was terrifying. Rent, electricity, staff, far bigger than carts and kiosks. But Armin had learned one rule: if you don't grow, you shrink. The cafe opened near a college campus. Walls painted bright yellow with murals of cornfields and quotes about dreams. Students flocked, Instagram feeds buzzed, and soon the cafe outperformed even the kiosk. But the pressure mounted. Suppliers demanded faster payments. A staff member tried to steal. Another competitor slashed prices. Nights blurred into mornings as Armin studied business books borrowed from the library, scribbling notes on inventory systems, branding strategies, and leadership. One night, exhausted, he sat alone in the cafe, staring at the mural of boys standing in a cornfield, hand raised toward the sky. A shadow fell across the mural. Kabir stood there, watching him. "You're burning out," Kabir said gently. "I can't stop," Armin whispered. "Every day I stop, poverty wins." Kabir nodded. "True. But remember, Armin, empires aren't built by one man working himself to death. They are built by teams. Trust your people. Train them. Delegate. Scale isn't just about size. It's about systems." Those words hit like water on fire. From the next day, Armin began training leaders within his team, boys who had grown from street beggars to trusted managers. He taught them everything he had learned: honesty, exact numbers, respect. By the age of 21, Armin Foods had 3 cafes, 5 kiosks, and more than 50 employees. His face appeared in newspapers with headlines like, "From Street to CEO." But Karim wasn't done. One night, Armin received a call. His original cart, the one that started it all, had been vandalized, burned down in flames. Armin rushed the alley, watching the ashes rise into the night sky. The sight stabbed him in the chest. For a moment, he felt like the boy on the pavement again, helpless, small. But then he remembered, people can take away my food, but not my fire. He knelt, picked up the charred iron wheel, and carried it back to his cafe. The next day, he placed it on the wall with a sign: "From these ashes, we built an empire." Customers stayed, inspired. The story spread. Armin Food became more than a business. It became a symbol. And deep inside, the beggar boy knew the journey wasn't done. The cafe walls were just stepping stones. The world outside was waiting. 10 years had passed since Armin sold his first corn cob under the banyan tree. Now, he stood inside a dazzling glass skyscraper in downtown New York, the new global headquarters of Armin Foods International. The building rose like a symbol of every tear, insult, and hunger pang he had endured. Across its lobby, a golden plaque read, "Built on honesty, powered by dreams." Armin adjusted his tailored suit. Though he still carried the same tin box in his pocket, the one that held his mother's memory and the first coins of honesty. No matter how far he climbed, he never let go of the boy on the pavement. The journey from cafes to empire had been relentless. Investors approached, partnerships blossomed, and Armin Food became a franchise spanning continents. His cafes dotted Dubai, London, Singapore, and Los Angeles. Each location carried the Yellow Crown logo, the same exact menu standards, the same fresh and honest pledge. But global success brought bigger battles. International chains tried to crush him, undercut prices, and question his brand's authenticity. Journalists doubted his story. How can a beggar boy build a billion-dollar company? Competitors mocked him, shareholders pressured him, and his board demanded expansion at breakneck speed. At times, Armin felt the same ache he had as a boy, the fear of losing everything. But each time doubt whispered, he would hold the old coins in his palm and remember, if I stop now, everything she suffered will be wasted. He refused to let go. Instead, he leaned into innovation. Armin Foods launched ready-to-eat snack packs in supermarkets. They introduced healthier variants, grilled corn salads, low-salt options, even gourmet flavors designed by chefs. He partnered with schools to provide free, nutritious corn lunches for underprivileged children, ensuring no child had to choose between education and hunger like he once did. His story became case studies in business schools. Harvard published a report titled, "The Honesty Brand: How Integrity Outperformed Capital." Social media hailed him as a billionaire with a beggar's heart. One day, at a global entrepreneurship conference, Armin walked onto a stage filled with thousands of students, CEOs, and dreamers. Spotlights bathed him, but he carried himself not like a celebrity, but like a man who still smelled smoke from his first cart. He began quietly, his voice firm. I was born on the pavement. I begged for coins while others walked past me like I was invisible. I lost my father to abandonment, my mother to illness, and many nights I lost hope itself. But I never lost one thing, honesty. The whole was silent. He continued, I started with nothing but a pot, 10 corn cobs, and a promise. That promise became a kiosk. That kiosk became a cafe. That cafe became an empire. Today, Armin Foods is worth billions, but wealth was never the dream. The dream was dignity. He held up the tin box. Inside this box are the first coins I ever owned, not by begging, but by honesty. These coins are worth more than billions, because they remind me who I am. If you want to build something that lasts, don't build on greed. Don't build on shortcuts. Build on values no fire can burn. The audience erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Students wept. Even hardened CEOs rose to their feet. Armin, the boy once invisible, was now a beacon for millions. Later that evening, he stood by his office window, gazing at the skyline. Neon lights flickered, planes soared, and the world seemed to bow before him. Yet his heart was calm. He closed his eyes and whispered, Amy, I kept my promise. The world knows our name. On his desk lay expansion plans for Africa, South America, and rural India, places where children still went hungry, places that reminded him of himself. He didn't just want to sell corn. He wanted to build futures. His empire wasn't just about food. It was about hope. Years later, when Forbes listed him among the world's richest billionaires, the headline read, From Beggar Boy to Billionaire, the story of Armin, the CEO who redefined success. But for Armin, success was never the money, never the skyscrapers. It was the sight of a street child eating in one of his cafes, free of charge, with dignity in his eyes. He smiled softly, placed the old tin box back into his pocket, and walked out of his office, not as a beggar, not as just a CEO, but as a living reminder that even the smallest spark can light up the entire world.